Isaiah 39:5. I shouldn't have even had to flip the page. So here's Hezekiah here. So just a little backstory. No, I was right. Isaiah 38 verse 1. I was getting ahead of myself. Isaiah 38:1. So we'll start. And it says, "In those days was Hezekiah sick unto death, and Isaiah the prophet of the son of Amoz came unto him and said unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Set thine house in order, for thou shalt die and not live. Then Hezekiah turned his face toward the wall and prayed unto the Lord, and said, Remember, O Lord, I beseech thee, how I have walked before thee in truth and with a perfect heart, and have done that which is good in thy sight. And Hezekiah wept sore. And the word of the Lord came unto Isaiah, saying, Go and say unto Hezekiah, Thus saith the Lord, The God of David thy father, I have heard thy prayer, I have seen thy tears. Behold, I will add unto thy days 15 years. I will deliver thee and this city out of the hand of the king of Assyria, and I will defend the city." So it goes on where the degree of the sundial, the shadow of the sundial, goes back 10 degrees and then it returns. So Hezekiah knows that it's something from the Lord. But we see in chapter 39 and verse 5, it's very interesting. So Hezekiah sees what he wants to happen, right? So he sees that he's going to get 15 more years. And it says in chapter 39, verse 5, it says, Then said Isaiah to Hezekiah, Hear the word of the Lord of hosts. Behold, the days come that all that is in thine house and all that is with that which thy fathers have laid up in store until this day shall be carried away to Babylon. Nothing shall be left, saith the Lord. And thy sons that shall issue from thee, which thou shalt beget, shall they take away, and shall be eunuchs in the place of the king of Babylon. Then said Hezekiah to Israel, Isaiah, not Israel, Good is the word of the Lord which hath spoken. He said, Moreover, for there shall be peace and truth in my days. So if you look at this is just plain selfish on the part of Hezekiah. We see he started off his reign good. We see that the Lord blessed him. Pretty sure he was the king that made towers and it says machinery, catapults, stuff like that. He started off very strong, and it was his time to go, right? God said, you're going to die. But he sees what the will of God is. He hears it verbally from the man of God. Isaiah hears it from God. But yet he refuses to follow the will of God. And then when the Babylonians come, he shows off his kingdom and everything. And so Isaiah comes and says, well, now Babylon's going to come back. It's pretty stupid to take, another great up-and-coming kingdom to show off all your might. It's like taking a person you know is a thief that loves to steal into your safe, showing them the code and everything, and oh, could you believe it? They broke into my house while I was on vacation. It's just common sense you would think he would have. But he sees what the Word of God is, and he reverses. He wants God to give him 15 more years. He's happy with 15 more years, which would be like totally awesome, That's when you go out skydiving, bungee jumping, roller coasters, anything, because if you're going to live 15 more years, God already told you that. But anyhow, we see how selfish his response is. And I think that's most of the time when we know the will of God and we reverse what the will of God is. We see God pointing us in a certain direction, but we don't like it. We don't want to die. Obviously, I don't think anybody in here, they'd be happy with if they heard that. Of course, he wants to live longer to enjoy his kingdom. But we see what the will of God is, but we ask God for something else. We pray, we get our answer, and either it's yes, no, or wait, and we only like one of those answers, don't we? We hate waiting. You see this generation, it's for me to talk about it, but You go through McDonald's drive-thru or something and they take 5 minutes longer. Oh, do we get mad because it took 5 minutes? Or you have a slow driver in front of you who's driving 55 in a 55, but you want to go 60 because you won't get a ticket. And Mr. Kohler was saying the one time is, truth be told, most of us don't even know how long it really takes us to get from point A to point B, because we always drive 5 over, 10 over, whatever it is, and we don't know the true, if we drive the speed limit, how long it's going to take us, because we hate waiting. And I think a lot of the times God puts a slow driver pulls out in front of us. He puts that slow driver, Justin and Pastor, through the past week, we were talking about, Thanksgiving. And one of the huge blessings we don't see is, almost divine intervention from God of, He puts that person in front of you. Like this week, we went shopping, and there was me and Andrew were away in the car for Justin. Well, they filled out some paperwork for something he had to buy. And we were away in the car. There's a McDonald's right beside us, and it was busy, had both of the drive-through lanes. All of a sudden you hear like this boom, 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 and then this smash right beside us. And I look up, and this car's like in the, where the drive-through worker takes your order. And so turns out somebody had a seizure. They tried to get her out of her car or something. Well, they were saying seizure. Who knows what it was. They're trying to get her out of her car, and she just took off, hit 2 cars through the intersection, jumped the curb, jumped another curb, and ran right into that drive-through thing. And so a car was, she went right in front of it, and a car had just pulled out of there. So you can imagine her going. She was going pretty fast. Her car, from hitting that, the engine was like pretty far up. So just I'm sure those people appreciate it, but that's so much God working, is because it's a busy McDonald's, there's cars waiting, but there's that perfect window of time, and we truly aren't thankful for that. We're thankful when something goes our way, when we can, a while back, my jacket broke, they gave me a brand new jacket. I think, wow, God is blessing me, but truth be told, that's what we think God's blessing us is, but it's way beyond the things that we don't see. Let's go over to Matthew chapter 4 and verse 18. Matthew 4:18. Says, "And Jesus, walking by the Sea of Galilee, saw 2 brethren, Simon Peter and Andrew his brother, casting their nets into the sea, for they were fishers. And he saith unto them, Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. And they straightway left their nets and followed him." So Jesus continues and calls John and his brother, I think it was James. I have a mind blank right there. But anyhow, what happens when Jesus calls Andrew and Peter? They were doing what their fathers had done, what they had known their whole life, right? They would have been brought up fishers. They would have been brought up, their father would have been brought up that, that's what they had known their whole life. But the first thing, when Jesus says, "Follow me," what's the first thing that they had to do was leave everything they knew. And we look over it because, it's a short verse. It's not like it stands out or anything. The Bible doesn't go on to expound about that. But it's truly something, as Jesus says, "Follow me." And the first thing Andrew and Peter have to do is they forsake their nets. And that's what's going to happen with us in our Christian walk, is when God says, "Follow me," we might have to leave every, the thing that we're most comfortable in, their job. What does Peter do as soon as, he gets weak? As he goes right back to, back to fishing, because that's what he's most comfortable in. But Jesus, as soon as he calls them, they had to forsake that to follow him. Let's go over to James chapter 4 and verse 17. James 4:17. It says, "Therefore to him that knoweth to do good, and doeth it not, to him it is sin." So, I'm sure it's happened over in my life, is we can be doing something and then God convicts us of that thing. And, we continue to do it, and you can feel that, the Spirit of God, burden you. You can walk past somebody 100 times, and then all of a sudden, God says, give that person a tract or something, and we think, well, I've worked with this person, I've known this person, what's the difference now? That's when it becomes sin to us. So we see, things that we see as right, if we've been saved any period of time, things we know are right, or things we've been taught our whole life, we just think, this person, it should be black and white to them. But if they're newly saved, if they're not convicted of that, if it doesn't clearly, not clearly say it, but if the Bible doesn't talk about it, it's not up for us to, be the Holy Spirit to that person, right? Because it's not our job. It's for the Holy Spirit to convict them of that sin. It's not for us to, lead them everywhere they go, because then when we're gone or something happens and we're not standing there, who's going to help that person? But that's when it becomes sin, is when we know to do good and we do it not. And just like with Hezekiah and with disobeying the will of God, he knows what was right. He knows, he heard from God, you're going to, this sickness is going to bring you to the point of death. But we try to reverse that, and that's when it becomes sin to us. Let's go over to Proverbs chapter 15 and verse 32. Something how we can get our conscience, or what you want to call it, it can get seared by, we get immune to things we shouldn't get immune to. Like when I saw that accident, me and Andrew acted pretty calmly. Everybody there, they're pretty scared, calling that, they have their hands on their head, things like that. But me and Andrew, it doesn't, of course it's not like we're not acting like something didn't happen, but we're pretty calm because we've lived at an intersection our whole life, which hasn't been the safest of intersections. People, they disobey the red sign that says stop, and through the 18 years that we've lived there, we've probably seen like 10 car accidents at least, just from living there. So, if it's when it's your first time seeing an accident, or you go to hunting and your first year you shoot, the level of excitement that's there, you're shaking almost, all the excitement that's there, but, after you shoot a couple deer, it's still exciting, but, it's not the same type of excitement that you have. And it's not good that, I was pretty disappointed afterwards that, I wasn't more traumatized, if you want to call it. I don't know what the right wording is from that, because it was a pretty bad accident. I don't even know if the person was all right or anything from that, but I was more like immune to it. I don't know, from seeing so many, it's just like another accident type thing. And it's not good. So Proverbs chapter 15, verse 32. It says, "He that refuseth instruction despiseth his own soul, but he that heareth reproof getteth understanding. The fear of the Lord is the instruction of wisdom, and before honor is humility." Isn't this so true that the person that doesn't want to hear instruction, the person that thinks they know everything, there's this lady at work who was there before I came. Better watch what I say in case somebody Googles my name, but she came before I did, and I hear that when she came, she was very, what's the proper term, thinking she knew everything type philosophy is, when she went for the first training, she supposedly learned it very fast, so she moved up to the second one. And she got training there, and she, pushed her instructors away, saying, I got this, just walk away type thing. She didn't want to hear it, but now, me and the other guy who started at the same time were 4 months after she's been there. In the 2 months that we've been there, we're already out testing her, getting better amounts of stuff like they had want. And she's having a super hard time with her job is because, first of all, she talks way too much to everybody that's there, so she doesn't do her job, first of all. But second of all, she refused instruction. She refused, the learning that you have to get. And that's a very key thing. You see with a child who can't hear instruction, they have a very hard spirit. It's very hard to work with them because they don't want to hear. And adults can become the same way as they think, well, I'm a certain age, so I don't need to hear instruction, or I'll hear it from somebody that I respect or something like that. But it's hard for the Spirit of God to work is because we refuse instruction. And it's one of the best things that can happen to us is, two people can read the same book, they can hear the same message, but the one that's ready to listen, ready to hear, will get much more out of it because they're ready to listen. Let's go over to James chapter 1 and verse 13. James 1:13. Says in verse 13, it says, "Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God, for God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man. But every man is tempted when he is drawn away with his own lust and enticed. And when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and sin when it is finished bringeth forth death. Do not err, my beloved brethren." So what do we see here is we see, God tempts no man. And there's Christians who get bitter against God, get angry at God because of what they're going through. But it's truly not God that's tempting them, that's bringing that evil. We see with Job what happens is, God gave permission for Satan to, tempt Job, but Satan was ultimately the one that brought the evil upon Job, because God does not tempt any man to do evil. But so many times when we go through that, we get bitter against God. We, give Satan the victory almost through that, because that's why he's tempting us, is to see if we'll fall. And when we do that, we're giving him the victory. But just like with Hezekiah, it was God's will that he goes. It was God's timing. But because he stayed around, he saw his kids turn away from following God. He saw, the kingdom that he had built, start to decrease in, the level that was, because what nation, let me make sure, okay, you see with, when Jehoshaphat and Ahab came together, it makes sense in Joshua's carnal mind, the more warriors you have, the better you'll do in battle. But what nation that has put God first has ever fallen? You see Israel throughout the time, how God has kept that nation alive, how God has protected them. And we see with America, we're not the most minerally rich, country in the world. We have some oil, but Iraq, they sure have a lot more oil than we do. We don't have a huge amount of supply of that stuff, but it's because we're founded on this country because we were looking for God. It wasn't because we were looking for material wealth. you see how many pilgrims, that came over here. Not that we agree with every religious aspect of them, but how many survived, from the Mayflower and all the two other ships. How many survived, to see the first Thanksgiving, or how many survived in general to see, their effort that they put in, mature into something. It wasn't very many, so it's not like that they came looking for money. It's because they put God first. And when we put God first, the same thing will happen in our lives. And it may not be the results that we dream for. With Psalms 37 verse 4, it says, "Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart." And I was telling the guys in jail, it might not, your desire right now might be that car, that house, that relationship or something, but when we delight ourselves in the Lord, that desire will change. And that's when He's able to give us the desires of our heart. Let's go over to Luke chapter 19, verse 8. Luke 19, 8. So here we have the story of Zacchaeus. So it says in verse 8, it says, "And Zacchaeus stood and said unto the Lord, Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor. And if I have taken anything from any man by false accusation, I restore him fourfold. And Jesus said unto him, This day is salvation come to this house, forsomuch as he also is the son of Abraham. For the Son of Man is come to seek and to save that which was lost." So did Zacchaeus see salvation because of restoring anything that he stole from any man fourfold, or giving half of his goods to the poor? No, that is not at all when he received salvation. But it's because he received salvation that he did this. It's because when he accepted Christ, we see the change in his life. And that's what Zacchaeus, being a tax collector, will have lived for, is, the money. We see people whose heartbeat is, money. That's what keeps them going. They work crazy amounts of hours just to get, time and a half to, make sure that they're at this level. And that's not at all what life is about, right? You even see older people that are doing that. Is they'll work, 65 hours a week, and you think, is that what you live for in life? And the one lady, she said, "But I see a nice paycheck at the end of the week." I'm sure you do, but what do you use that paycheck on? Because you lived your whole life. And if that's where you want to spend it, great. But that's not what our heartbeat should be. But Zacchaeus, his desires changed when he accepted Christ. His, tax collecting, all those things that he had done his whole life had changed because he had started following Christ. I need to hurry here before Pastor said 5 after, right? 5 to 10 after. Let's see. Galatians chapter 6 and verse 2. Says, there we go. It says, "Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if a man think of himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceiveth himself. But let every man prove his own work, and then shall he have rejoicing in himself alone, and not in another. For every man shall bear his own burden." So it starts in verse 1 talking about our brothers overtaking in a fault. And it's so easy to, when we find out somebody did something, it's easy to look down on them to, think, well, I would never do that. I would never be there. You see people in life and you think, how could they do that? How could they be so wicked? But it says in verse 3, he deceiveth his own self. And it's so true as you see that person in sports who thinks, that they're going to be in the NBA, NFL, MLB, whatever it is. They think that they're so good that they're going to make it. And then you see somebody else who, they're much more humble and they're able to, succeed because they'll hear the instruction of their coach, they'll hear the instruction of, their parents who know better than them. But that person who thinks that they're so good, so fast, such a whatever position it is, they think that they're so good that, it's amazing to see who makes it, into the next levels. It's not people that you normally think, but it's people that, are bettering themselves. And truth be told, in our life, the things that we do that, whether it's whatever it is, as far as material wealth or whatever, nothing that's easy ever comes with great reward. It's if you put the effort into your body, into exercise or something like that, you can expect certain results. But if you just don't care about it, you're not going to get those results. But if you put the effort in, you should expect something out of it. But that's lost my train of thought there. Let's turn over to our last passage, Philippians chapter 4 and verse 11. It says, not that I speak in respect of one, but I have learned that whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. I know both how to be abased and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. We see athletes, they love Philippians chapter 4 and verse 13, right? They'll put it under their eyes, they'll put it on their shoes, they'll put it on their jerseys, wherever they want to put it, because I can do all things through Christ that strengtheneth me. But they seem to leave out, chapter 12, I know how to both be abased and how to abound, how to, that whole thing. They don't know, they don't put, Philippians chapter 4 and verse 12 on verse 12. They don't seem to put that verse on, but, Philippians chapter 4 and verse 13, they love that. But you can't have one without the other. You can't have, Christ isn't going to, we can do all things to Christ which strengtheneth us. When we learn how to be abased and how to abound, how to suffer need, how to go through want, we are able to let Christ strengthen us after that. But without following the one, we're not going to have the other. We see Paul, he had a thorn in the flesh that he prayed 3 times for God to remove, and God chose best to leave it there. And if I was Paul, I think I would absolutely get bitter against God. He ends up giving his life for Christ. He ends up giving, his position that would be so highly desired, how many people would look up to him. And he learned how to just let that go and follow Christ. And Christ left that thorn in the flesh. Why? To keep him humble. And that's what he's going to do in our life, is he's going to leave that thorn in the flesh. That thing that's, that's going to aggravate us more than we should let it. We're going to have that thing, but if we don't let the will of God be fulfilled through that need, it is going to... We are just like Hezekiah, who, we're happy because we don't see the destruction in our days, but it's fine for our kids to see that. It's fine for, the things that we truly should be striving for the next generation, so that somebody else doesn't have to go through the hardships that we did. But instead, our attitude changes so that it's all about us and not about others. All right, Let's close on a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we come to you in prayer and we just ask, Lord, that you would be with today's services, Lord, that you have passed the words to say. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Steve, could you come take up the offering because we don't have Scotty.
You got this, Tom? Yes. You want to do it? No. No. Everyone take your songbooks this morning, turn to page 439. We will sing the first and last verses. Stay seated. Birthdays for the month of November. We have any? Birthdays for November. That birthday for November? Wow. I guess I'll chip in and say I'm old timer. My birthday was the first of the month, so it was a long time ago. I forgot all about it.
Well, mine was just a couple days after yours. All right, Merry verses. We will start.
supplications with
thanksgiving.
let your requests be made known
Unto God.
Philippians 4:6. Very good.
Amen.
Romans 12:9. Let love be without dissimulation. Abhor that which is evil. Cleave to that which is good. Romans 12:9. Very good.
Amen. Boy, big word.
Psalm 119:10-11. With my whole heart have I sought thee. Oh, let me not wander from thy commandments. Thy word have I hid in my heart, that I might not sin against thee. Psalm 119:10-11.
Isaiah 40, the flower fadeth, but the word of God shall stand forever. Isaiah 48.
Amen. Okay, perfect tennis and quarter awards. Everybody that got perfect tennis here is getting a quarter award, so we'll start out. Kevin Kohler. Zach Ramsky. Cameron Ansel. Matthew Edwards. Kevin Kohler. Jacqueline Kohler. Roman McKay. Emmanuel Edwards. And then the Kentucky. Daniel Edwards. This is our group for November. Congratulations, kids. Next, John Kohler will get his quarter award, too. Okay, in closing, Tom.
In closing, everyone take your songbooks, turn to page 288. We will sing the first and last verses. Bob, could you close us in prayer at the conclusion, please? Page 288. First and last verses.
I will hasten to the praises of thy
old.
What do you preach on there, Ryan?
I couldn't do very good. I don't think I could, if they were all here. Nancy's not here. She's in there praying.
So we're just gonna like.
We're gonna wing it.
Okay.
That's all we can do.
Look like just.
1 Corinthians 15:57.
I'm gonna talk with Chris's dad tomorrow to see about maybe coming up to this one. He is not doing anything. So when he goes to go, he passing out because all the blood is rushing from his head. That's what I tell him. But he walked from the living room, from the entryway into the living room into the kitchen at Thanksgiving. Cameron almost on one side and I was on the other, and he went down. We couldn't hold him up.
Wow. Just that week.
His blood's not flowing right, so he's a doctor's appointment tomorrow. I'm going with her because I'm off to see. And I said if he did it again, he's not walking from one room to another without one of us beside him. Right?
Wow.
Because he can't. Friday he didn't have any episodes, but he was having them up to 2 times a week. And half the time he was doing it while she was outside, so he'd fall to the floor. I don't know if you could hear that hitting his head or breaking something.
Oh, yeah?
So, but I was shocked. I couldn't hold him. Cameron and I couldn't hold him. We had to lower him because we couldn't hold his weight. I mean, he went completely weightless.
Lori is not coming up tonight. I'm going to take her home and then go home. If Dad is not going to one of the ministries, he wants to go with me. There's no sense in someone taking him around.
Right.
So
Okay.
to find out if he is going.
Okay.
I'm not going to get to him.
Yeah, I'm hungry now.
I am too.
I don't know what there is.
I don't know. I should go.
Peaches.
Pastor, what song are we singing?
Da 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 da, willing to die, and then so I'll cherish the old rugged cross. I do.
Just gonna wing it, guys.
Thank you. We got locked out. I had to crawl through a window. Thankfully, there was a window.